Losing your hair can be very emotionally difficult, and if you're dealing with hair loss right now, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. You might even be surprised at how difficult it has been to deal with mentally. I can tell you with 100% certainty that you are not alone in how you're feeling. For men especially, we are still not really encouraged to share how we're feeling or if we're struggling with something, and we're still expected to be stoic and resilient, not being affected by things as superficial as hair loss. I wanted to share the story of my hair loss journey so that if you are someone who is feeling depressed or panicking about hair loss, to let you know that there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. And you will definitely make it through if you deal with it in the right way. I wasted close to 10 years of my life stressing and worrying about my hair before finally taking the leap and shaving it all off so that I could move on with my life. My goal is to help others cut down that time frame significantly because there are so many more things in life more worthy of your time and attention. So let's first go back in time a little bit. When I was a little kid, I had this kind of crazy bleach blonde hair that got progressively darker as I got older and turned into a more of a dirty blonde color. So this is me in college around 18 or 19 years old, and you can see I was going with the shaggy long hair look. At the time, I did this because I wanted to cover what I thought was a very large forehead, which I do have a bit of a large forehead, but what I didn't realize was that my hairline was actually receding at the temples, and I was subconsciously trying to cover that up. You can see in this picture where the wind is blowing my hair back that there's definitely some receding at the temples, and I was doing everything I could to cover that up. After college, I got a corporate job, and so having this shaggy long hair look was no longer acceptable. And this was my first step into facing my hair loss. You can really see the amount of recession that has taken place at the temples at this point. And it was really around this time, at around age 22, that my hair loss got really aggressive and happened very, very quickly. Between this photo and the next one I'm about to show you, only 1 year has passed. Not only had the receding gotten much worse, but you can see that it's really thinning around the front. I was only 23 at this point, and even though I'm smiling and look relatively happy in these photos, I can tell you that I had never felt worse. I was single and in my early 20s. I had a good job and I was living in a new city. This honestly should have been one of the most fun times of my life, but I can tell you without a doubt that it was the worst. Unfortunately, I fell into a pretty bad depression at this point. Because I was living in a new city, I didn't have a strong support group with me, and I really wasn't having much luck dating anybody, which I attributed to my hair loss. I thought that it was making me unattractive and that it made me look older than I actually was. This was made exponentially worse because there was a guy in my office who constantly would make remarks to me about my hair loss, which only validated all the thoughts I was having. See, somebody else is noticing my hair loss. It must be noticeable. Everybody's talking about it. In hindsight, I now know that this guy was totally projecting because I've seen pictures of him lately and he has also been losing his hair. So if you have somebody like this in your life who is making comments about your hair loss, just know that they are probably projecting as well, and you shouldn't take it personally. Getting back to the story, at this point, I was so desperate for a solution that I was trying everything. You name the product, I probably tried it. I did Rogaine, Biotin, Finasteride. I had a subscription to Hims. I had special shampoos that were supposed to help with thinning hair. You name it, I tried it. Finally, at this point, I came across hair transplants while doing some research online. I found out that there was a doctor in my city who had really good reviews and had a ton of experience doing hair transplants, so I decided to set up a consultation. When I went in and met with them, everything sounded too good to be true. They would simply take me in for about a day. They would move hair from the back of my head to the front, filling in the gaps where I needed it. And within a few months, I would have my hairline back and I would have a full head of hair. After giving it some thought, I finally decided to go through with the procedure. I ended up doing the strip method procedure, which meant that they literally take a strip of skin from the back of your head and move the hair follicles to the front where you need them. The upside of this procedure is that they can get more hair during one sitting. The downside to this procedure is that it does leave a linear scar on the back of your head. But at the time, I thought that I wanted my hair back and I wanted as much of it as possible. The procedure itself went mostly fine, although I do remember having a rough couple of days afterwards. But once I was feeling better, I realized I had a whole new set of insecurities to deal with. I just want to take a quick moment and say that if you do end up getting a hair transplant, that's completely fine. A lot of people have gotten them and have been really happy with the results. I would just encourage you to make sure that you do your research before you end up going through with the process. So at this point in my life, my self-confidence had never been lower, and on top of that, I had just traded one insecurity for another. And on top of that, it had cost me almost 12 grand. I also felt like I was now living a lie. I had gone through this hair transplant procedure without telling anybody because I wanted to keep it a secret. I thought that it would be a totally seamless transition and that nobody would notice, which just didn't end up being the case. So this began what I call my hat phase, where I barely ever left the house without wearing a hat. And to top it all off, my hair loss continued. I started to notice a bald patch towards the top of my head, towards the crown of my head, that was moving towards the front. So my options at this point were to either get another hair transplant or shave my head. And I don't think I'm spoiling anything when I tell you what happened next. But ultimately, I decided that I didn't want to go through with another hair transplant because I was never really happy with the results from the first one, and I didn't think that it would be worth the money to do it again. So that was the point where I finally decided to shave it all off. But I still had one more insecurity to deal with. As I mentioned before, the hair transplant procedure I did was the strip method, which left a linear scar on the back of my head. And I knew as soon as I shaved my head that that scar would now be exposed to the world for everyone to see. And while I admit it did take me a little bit of time to get over this new insecurity, at this point I was done feeling self-conscious. I was done feeling insecure, and I just wanted to be myself, and I was really determined to not let this become a new insecurity for me. So while I did continue to wear hats sometimes when I would leave the house, I started doing it less and less, and just became more and more comfortable being myself out in the open. And for what it's worth, no one has ever asked me about the scar. This truly led to a whole new chapter in my life. I felt like I was no longer hiding. Finally, I could breathe easier and just be comfortable in my own skin. Looking back, it seems crazy that I spent so much time and energy worrying and stressing about my hair, but it was a process that I had to get through in my own way. Now, if you're thinking about shaving your head, I fully encourage you to go for it because it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. But if you're not quite ready for that step, feel free to let me know in the comments what it is that you're struggling with. Do you think it's going to make you less attractive, make you look older? Whatever it is, please feel free to share because I found that this is the best first step to getting through this process. I want to thank you for watching to the end. Please give me a like and a subscribe as I plan on making a lot more similar content in the future. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.